Hands on your.
No, it's just. Yeah.
Do you have to run again in the fall? Yes, I do. Yeah, because my certificate says December.
This is the back.
The back.
Yeah. Did go to a show.
So you used to like. Any place I've never been. I'm interested in it.
Being in the desert, everything's brown. The houses are brown, the sheep are brown, there's no grass, there's no trees. I'll go nuts.
Something's happening.
Occasionally, yeah.
I mean, it's further south from Virginia, right? I want to get there. See what we got going here. I'm not that prepared for this meeting.
You're not prepared?
That's too much. We gotta be our committees, but listen, I don't know, if I send the minutes, I feel like I need to go with them really.
Yeah.
People can read, you know.
Yeah, right. Just get behind them. I didn't do anything too. I didn't even get my minutes done.
We don't have got it, we haven't got it to go, so it's the other. I got it for parts, just I finished it today or yesterday, but you know, it's, we take a break.
Well, yeah,
I think about it called recess once a year at Christmas.
yeah.
Just say,
Exactly.
let's take the day, let's take the month off.
Well, we did, I think after the first meeting in December, our committee didn't meet till just this.
Yeah,
this
I don't
last
think
week.
ours is gonna be, it's just a lot. I mean, I was comments the other day. Sometimes there's 6 meetings a month.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And that's on top of everything else.
And I'm for social life, that's the thing. I think that, so I gotta, I'll be there for breakfast, lunch and dinner.
Aw.
I say, oh, okay, that's right, let's see what I can do. And, yeah, this, and then I got the other. Food pantry stuff.
Oh,
Just
yeah,
drives you
that's
nuts.
right.
That's nuts. Sometimes you got annual meeting in March. Yeah.
I mean, it's good to be involved.
It is,
does
it is.
get- It does
Sometimes I
get
think I take that.
overwhelmed.
Yeah.
It's a little loud.
Sometimes we just, you got.
But I'm sure Eddie can hear that house without any problem.
You know, some of them, I know.
Well, James Walker is here. James,
Which ones?
James.
Oh,
All right, it's 7
I
o'clock.
don't know some.
Happy New Year. Time to get started back to business again, so, we're gonna start with, Chief, Jenkins to give his report.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Council, thank you for having me this evening. You can see a couple of the significant calls for service in the month of November. We responded to the food line for a grain larceny. We were able to review the video footage and obtain a description of the suspect and the suspect vehicle. On the 27th, we actually noticed him coming back into the parking lot and go back into the store. Anyway, we did a consensual encounter with him in the parking lot. Showed him the video, a picture of the video. He admitted that it was him, read him his rights, he confessed to stealing the meat, and since arrested and charged for the larceny. DUI crash investigation on Langhorne Road. Then towards the end of the month, we received a email bomb threat to the police department. The Virginia Fusion Center confirmed that it was a email hoax. Multiple southern police departments across Virginia received the same email. We were able to look at our security video footage from around the police department and noticed that, no one had, tried to sabotage the police department from the outside and a bit searching that not happen. Couple of community events, Patrick's council meeting, and of course, we still continue with our, lunch with the children at Scottsville Elementary. Auxiliary officers donated 75 hours of their time to the police department, during the month of December. We attended the, sexual assault response in the meeting with our Commonwealth Attorney's Office. And we assisted, Lake Monticello Police Department with the execution of a search warrant in the town to obtain some, payment records. You have the, statistical sheet attached. But I mean, I think you have to do a little comparison.
Yeah,
You can see 2022 calls for service. We were dispatched for a total of, in 22, dispatched 1,379 calls for service, January 1st to December 31st. 729 of those calls were in the town of Scottsville. And then for 2023, we dispatched a total of 2,181 calls for service for the 12 months. And 1,411 of those calls were in the town of Scottsville. Scottsville Police Department is responding to 78% of those calls for service. Throughout the 12 months, we had a total of 446 summonses and 62 custodial arrests for the year. For the 12 months. And then, of course, you have a detailed list of types of calls for service attached. That's all I have, Mayor, unless there's some questions.
No, any questions for the chief?
Chief, why did your calls in the town double in 22 and 23?
Well, I think it's because we've done a much better job of, with our community policing. I think I know when we started community policing in Albemarle, one of the key measurements for our success and being able to track success was, people, businesses feeling more comfortable to report incidents to the police. And I think that's what we're starting to see, as people will call us. Also wanted to make sure that we did a better job of documenting our call for service. I noticed when I first come here that a lot of people would call the police department, talk to the individual officer, but we would never capture that through dispatch as a call for service.
Okay.
Now I've tried to make sure that I relate to the officers and myself that we get a call for service, that we actually capture the call for service. I think council needs to see what we're doing in the town and what our community is getting out of the police department.
yeah, I get a lot of questions about that. That's why I asked for these numbers, because people say, how come we spend so much on this? Right? It's nice to have the numbers in the back pocket to say, hey, this is what you get for your money.
Any other questions? Thank you so much, Chief. Appreciate it. The fire chief here this evening, I don't see him. So, yeah. We will bypass that one. Debbie Smith has relinquished the reins of the Chamber of Commerce, so instead of me giving a chamber report this evening, we have the new president of our chamber, James Walker. And Debbie's with them, and Kathy is with them. And so, James, if you want to come up here for a minute and
Sure.
you can either stand there, come over here and have a seat, whichever you prefer.
I don't feel like being the only one standing.
All right. I just asked James if he would just introduce himself and those that are with him this evening, which we've pretty much already done. But, James will just say a couple of things about his thoughts for the future of joint actions between the town and the chamber to make everything better around here.
Yeah, that's exactly what we want to do. Thanks for having me, and thanks for including the chamber. And I think probably the biggest thing to note about the chamber is that we are fully staffed, which since I've been involved with the chamber for at least at least 4, maybe coming on 5 or so years. You know, I came to the meetings before I was fully engaged, but you know, the bylaws call for 6 board members. We have 6 board members. We have fully staffed officers. You know, last year I was the vice president and treasurer. Now we have a new vice president, Kathy. And Debbie has taken over treasurer, switching from president to treasurer. And Kathy was our secretary. We have a new secretary as well. So having them here tonight, I think also is another notable progression of the chamber is that we're a lot more cohesive. You know, Debbie did a lot on her own the last couple of years. Before that, Linda did a lot on her own. Before that, Brian and Linda did a lot on their own. So really what I see the chamber doing now is we have committees, which I can't remember having committees in a long time. We have an events committee, membership committee, and we're working on a newsletter. So right now we have a newsletter committee. And I think that'll make us much more efficient, able to make more events and more successful events and bring more people to the town. And we all recognize that when the businesses are doing better, the town's doing better, which then helps the businesses do better. And so it's just a snowball effect that I really want to keep rolling. I feel a different momentum in the chamber right now than I felt in a while. And we had our last meeting. We have a lot of dates planned ahead of time. You know, we have a calendar. I sent Javier the meeting minutes from our last meeting that list out a lot of dates. I know he's already got a lot of them, but some of those more detailed dates like membership committees and stuff like that are on those meeting minutes. And so I don't see a great need to go over those dates or anything, but yeah, so expect a newsletter, expect some more fun events. One of my personal goals for the chamber and being the president is to bring on a little bit more cohesiveness between the town's doings and the chamber's doings. And I think Ron is the man for the job. I asked him today if he was could take on a little bit more work, and he didn't say no. But basically what I want to asking him to do is, you know, basically he's given a chamber report here at these meetings to do the same thing at our meetings, give the town updates, and then also give the town meeting. Like, I know they're set at certain dates, certain weeks of the month and all, but having people remind them for the officers in our meeting, the meetings this month, guys, are this, and this. And I'm gonna be able to review your meeting minutes. He explained to me how to get them off the internet. So I'll be able to review your meeting minutes if I can't make it to the meeting, and go over them or ask any questions or any clarification. So have a better understanding of what y'all doing, and y'all have a better understanding of what we're doing, and you know, left hand knowing what the right doing is kind of feeling. So but that's my main goal. And like I said, just keep improving the town.
We appreciate it, and if the chamber and the town work together, we saw what happened with holiday happenings. We
Mm.
have
That was
a lot of
rough.
people in town.
Yeah.
Joint effort, and Scan was involved in that too, so it takes the team to make things work, so we appreciate all Debbie did, and then Linda before her, and Brian, like you said, so we hope you will.
Yeah,
Some big.
yeah, I got the big shoes to fill for sure.
Can I ask you a couple questions just about, Chair, I don't know.
Sure.
Of the town businesses, there's, I guess, the majority of in the chamber, right? I guess
I would say
80%, 90%, what'd you guess?
I wouldn't guess that high.
Oh, really?
Quite frankly, no. And maybe the story, yeah, I wouldn't even say
Okay.
that high. We got a lot of work to do. We're still working on a lot of our foundation of the chamber, if you will. Getting a website up and running.
Yeah.
The last year or so after COVID was a big switch from our old website to our new website. Tracking our members, you know, with COVID times, we gave a lot of people a lot of leniency with signing up in October or September and giving them a whole nother year's membership on top of that. And so right now what we're doing is one of our big pushes this week is a membership new gathering information. We have a lot of different lists, email lists versus past members list and current members list, combining them into a more accurate condensed list. You know, some people on there's duplicates. So, and then having a membership drive after that. So that would be a great goal is to get,
Yeah,
I would say 75-80% of the towns. We've,
Okay.
I would say 100% of the businesses have been approached in town, multiple times.
Oh,
And,
they have.
there's not a lot of, I would say there is a lot of, support, but the biggest, hurdle we face is, some of the businesses don't see what the benefits are of joining the chamber. So I think that'll become
Does it
obvious.
cost, what's it cost to join?
It's a scaled,
Oh, okay. So that's,
tier,
so
yeah.
part of it's money.
But, yeah, I mean, I've heard from all accounts that compared to every other chamber, it's pretty much a free chamber. You know, if you're self-employed, which a lot of folks are, it's $50 for a year. If you have 1 to 2 employees, $60. 4 employees is $80 for a year, so it's, you know, it's not a lot. I joined the chamber viewing it as a opportunity to do more in the town, being that I'm not living in town limits, I live in Buckingham. But it's not everybody has that point of view. We get a lot of what's in it for me kind of questions. And so I think that proof has to be in the pudding. You know, we have to show these events, we have to show, hey, how much did your business increase on the first Saturday of December compared to last year? And then how many people came down to see the lights, how many different days, and, you know, so I think it'll definitely get there.
Thanks.
Any
I
other
just-
questions?
Yeah, I do. Well, I actually have a request. One thing that, I notice is that it would be helpful when we have events to have a process documented about how you put one on, right? Because nothing's really documented right now. And as you have new events and go through the steps, it would be good to capture that so that we can publish it, you know, and that, I think that's a joint effort, town and chamber, and maybe other parties as well, of how to coordinate that, how to submit the form, how to, you know, go, who you have to go to, and sort of a little bit of a flow chart.
Yeah,
So if,
I think that's a
maybe
great
if you can carry that to the events committee, if they could consider that, I think that would be really helpful. And we might get more people signing up if they knew what they had to do ahead of time, perhaps.
absolutely. Yeah, no, we have a lot of data from the holiday happenings, this recent one, because we had basically the month leading up to it, or maybe even 6 or 8 weeks of leading up to it. We had a meeting, Debbie led a meeting every week, and what the agenda was all printed out, and I've saved all that information. So I have the data, just need to condense it and see what worked and.
Yeah, that would
what
be
it is.
good, because even, you know, getting the chief and the police department, if it's big enough where there's gonna be need to be parking or traffic control or something like that, it would be really, really helpful.
All right, great. Thanks for the feedback.
Okay, anything else? Thank you for being here tonight, and you know, you all have other things to do, so you're welcome to stay as long as you want to.
Yeah, I mean.
We won't look hard upon you if you get up and leave.
No, well, I appreciate it, but, no, I'll stick it out for you.
Okay,
All right.
thank
I'll
you.
take my seat back with the crew.
Mr. Bissett, you have anything?
Oh, yes. ARB met on Thursday and we held a quorum and we had everybody there. Except for one of the new members that got a surgery, but it was nice to be able to do that. We had things come across the docket. Signed for the tobacco shop. He applied, none of us were really big fans of the design of it, but it fit all the criteria. And so the only stipulation we put on him was to take away that neon sign, the temporary sign on the window before he puts it up. It's just so in the way. Then the Montessori school applied for their sign as well. She said her daughter made it, or her daughter's.
Yeah.
It's a really good looking sign. Again, everything was good with that, but we did have her commit to 2 locations on the building. It's gonna be dependent on the contractor and where he thinks he can put it up the best, but other than that, Tiger Fuel and their signage came up. Everything looks pretty good on the building. I mean,
It does.
we
look
had an
good.
issue with how to calculate the square footage, you know, per sign kind of thing. So instead of delaying it, We just removed one of those signs on the side from the plan and then told them. This is approved. If you really want that sign, we can all calculate the square footage together. But as of right now, if you want to continue, we don't want to slow you down anymore. Here's what we have set forth, and they got their representative seemed really on board with that. He was like, we just want to get it done. I don't think they're, dead set on the car wash sign on the side of the building. So other than that, Josh Peck is now our chair, which we all had an idea that was going to happen, but he's officially the chair, and then Claire, one of our new members, is going to be the vice chair. She was
Nice.
in that position, but that's about it.
Questions? Any questions? Javier, did you get, Dan?
Dan's online right
Yeah,
now.
Dan has a really bad cold and he didn't work.
Hey, can you all hear me?
So,
Yes,
all right,
sir.
here's your report.
A couple of things. Well, first of all, it is, I'm sorry that I'm not there in person, although you all may not be sorry that I'm not there. Two things I was going to say. First of all, it does my heart good to know that there's two former council members serving in different ways, just as you mentioned, Josh in the ARB, who's back, and also the Planning Commission was happy to welcome Liz to the Planning Commission this past week. So that was a nice addition for us as we then reviewed the comp plan. We also talked about a very fun event that happened at the Boys and Girls Club last month. Probably one of the funnest things I've done as a planning commissioner, town councilor, was taking the Boys and Girls Club and having Lincoln and Councilor Morse and Javier and just working together to have a really fun session with them and a really instructive session after they toured. And then also we had a time to talk about the Rivera Club and what they're up to and the zoning text amendment, which I know that's going to be talked about again tonight. We talked about that some as the Planning Commission last week. And then lastly, just as there was a discussion, one of the things I mentioned to the Planning Commission was that a number of years ago when Matt came as the town administrator, a lot of what we did as the town was put in motion after a meeting we had with a mentor that he had a lot of planning and thinking, and we really about 4 or 5 years, that's kind of the plan that was implemented. The issues we had in the town that some time later, the council was a bit different. And one of the points I was making to the Planning Commission is right now, in this unique opportunity we have as we're creating the comp plan, is that we have an opportunity as the Planning Commission, as the council, to work together to come up with the new vision, the new things that we want to collectively do as a town. And it's interesting, sometimes when you create a comprehensive plan, it is at a time where it's just you're fulfilling the duty to do it. But this one hits at a time where it actually is, there's a lot of different people involved in the process. And so, I mean, everybody knows that on the council, the same thing with the Planning Commission. As we see all the information that Lincoln pulls together, it'll be helpful for us to then take the steps involved. And he's also going to be introducing an aspect to the comp plan that hasn't been in a part of it in recent years. That'll be interesting. I think he's going to mention that tonight. So at any rate, it was a very active and helpful meeting that we had.
Okay, any questions for government services? Not government, so Planning Commission?
I was just curious, is the draft complete?
No, it's still a process of him working on it, but it's being very actively worked on.
Is the draft shareable outside of,
Yeah,
it is?
Drive, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, even outside of council and planning commission, or is it right now because it's being worked on?
You want to be able to be at a point where you can share a draft in
Right.
anticipation of a public hearing.
Right,
So I would want to share a version that we would all feel comfortable sharing out.
that's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
Are we at that point yet?
We're almost there.
Okay.
So,
Can you flag me? Can you and or Lincoln flag me when that happens and
all of
send me a copy?
I'll send planning commission has the same OneDrive, so I'll send it to all of you guys.
Okay,
Yeah.
that'd be great. Thank you.
Anything else for Dan? Mr. Heisen?
The minutes haven't been completed. We had a meeting, but we did look at the some of the things we're looking at tonight about the resignations and about the interview process and application. And so, one of the things that looked at was interviewing, and there was an idea that thrown out that the town council should be in charge of the interviews and should be part of that. But maybe they could have a couple commission members on the interview, who could interview with, they could be part of that too, that either like two ARB members or planning commissioner could be part of the interview, but it looked like the responsibility is just with the town council, and it should not be pre-selected or interviewed first. The other thing we looked at, but I thought would see if the town council wants us to do that. I know there's a temporary policy on public hearing, which I think we're going to use next week. And, some communities have a regular official policy on public hearings. And if we wanted to do that and post it online, like some communities do, we could look at that, what's required for a public hearing. Because I think we have a different one each time, sometimes 2 minutes, 3 minutes, signups. So, we don't have that many public hearings. So if it's something the town council wanted us to look at, we could look at an official policy on public hearings.
Well, isn't that part of that designated by the state, guidelines about when you have to have public hearings and when you don't have
No,
public hearings?
No, it's not about when, it's about how.
Oh, I see. It's a
Sometimes-
process.
Sometimes we require them to get their address, sometimes
Right.
we don't.
I
Sometimes it's a sign up sheet to speak.
Right,
sometimes
It's not consistent.
So it's
Right.
kind of like the,
Like time to
Provide-
speak.
To provide clarity, the planning commissioner chair asked for some rules for their public hearing.
okay,
So I provided that. Bill saw that when I CC'd town council on the planning commission's agenda. I followed up on that staff work because planning commission seemed pretty clear. I wasn't really gonna bring it up until government services started talking to the town council would want one. But that was specifically tailored to the planning commission.
I
Their
see.
chair reached out. Just
okay,
to
so that's the
clarify.
context.
But,
Okay,
but you're still pretty much going to be controlled by the Virginia Freedom of Information Act for the requirements of
Right.
public hearing and various and sundry code sections here, there, and everywhere.
Right, that's what I would have
the
thought.
requirements are for advertising for a particular public hearing, and some matters require X, and some matters require Y, and some matters require Z. So,
Right.
that's the issue, and that's for town council.
right, but that's what we're talking
Right.
about, a policy at the council level, correct?
I also looked at some of them allow back and forth information, and some require only one time per person, certain minutes, 2 minutes, 5 minutes. So there's a lot of different, each community has a different kind of policy on,
Right, you can do whatever you
Yeah,
want to do as
that's what I'm
far as public.
right,
You have a policy for that, or I think at least you have one that's been proposed. I know you and I
yeah, that's,
talked about exchanging that. We exchanged a policy. That you could, the council could
Yeah.
establish for controlling how the public interfaces, that's a bad word to use, interplay
right.
maybe with
Right.
the council. When they stand up to speak, what's appropriate, what isn't appropriate, how you speak and whatever.
Right.
Now, some bodies set specific requirements for the amount of time somebody has to speak, because there's specific
Yeah.
legislation for certain public bodies that require, that parties to a quasi judicial hearing, which you all don't really do.
Right.
That parties to a quasi judicial hearing have equal time, so that's why you're gonna find some proceedings,
right.
each party will have an equal amount of time to talk, but in other proceedings, you don't have that restriction, so it's all in the ballpark.
So do you recommend the town come up with a policy, or just do it each case like this, case by case?
Is there a problem?
We don't know.
Well, I know you
I don't-
don't.
Well,
normally do
no,
those.
with the last public hearing, I don't know if it's a problem, but it was excessively long. It was almost 4 hours.
Yeah.
And I think, that could have been curtailed, and some of it was off.
Was this for town council?
No, that was for it was for the, when they
The
wanted
apartment?
departments. That was, kind of out there, and it wasn't very official or very well planned,
For which, for town council?
It was a town council public hearing, yeah.
Yeah, but if you, basically that you can control in any meeting if 10 people show up and you've allocated in your agenda,
Right,
and lots of public bodies in the name of efficiency
Right.
and good government. Have a rough timeline for
Right.
their agenda
Right.
items so that they can plan how long they're going to devote to each particular item. So that if for one item, 10 people show up and you've allocated 20 minutes for it, each person can get 2 minutes and you can
Okay.
vary the time.
okay,
It really,
They just-
that's the dilemma about
yeah, okay,
about setting time, and sometimes you have something that comes before you that's so controversial, you get a full house, there's 100 people
Yeah.
out there, and you
Right.
can't
That's
really
what we had.
say, oh, everybody's gonna get 10 seconds, because you'll have a rebellion on your hands.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, I would add just two quick comments. One is I'm all for consistency. I think the more consistent these processes are, the easier it is for us, the easier it is for other people who are engaging, just like the events thing that we talked about. But also, I understand about the length of that meeting, but I think it was really important. And I think in general, it's really important to hear from individuals, especially on important things like that, because, we represent them and it's really important for me. I'm sure it's important for you to hear from individuals. So something we just have to expect will be long.
That meeting, we had a, time limit.
Yeah.
Time,
Yeah.
so.
But there were just a lot of
was a
people,
lot.
and so it went on for, 4 hours or whatever it did, but I think it was necessary to hear everyone in that process.
Job, it's probably something.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think it's really important. So I wouldn't put a time limit on the session per se, but I have no problem saying, okay, everybody has 3 minutes or 5 minutes, depending on how many attendees are there. But I think it is important to hear from everyone.
the nice thing about Scottsville is that the committees or commissions or the council interact with the public at
Absolutely.
that time. If you go to Albemarle County, they've got an egg timer, they'll flip. You stand up and tell them who you are and what you want to talk about, and they don't point their lips. So that's a good thing about us. We can all, talk back and forth.
Yeah.
You go over there, everybody's gonna be talking to Chinese monkeys. I mean, and that's not derogatory now, trying to equate them, but they're just up there like little wooden things you see here, or you see those people, that's what they remind me of. 5 times I've addressed them. They have yet to say hi, so. We're done.
Meredith, did you have a comment?
All
Well,
right,
I was just, that is standard procedure. It, I think comes off maybe as rude sometimes, but that if somebody has 3 minutes to speak, a lot of boards and councils and stuff like that, it's standard procedure to not say anything.
So,
Just let the
But
group
the
have
point I
it.
think is, on a couple of occasions, I was sitting there with 4 other people. 4 people from, the public. Everybody else is administration, police, council, etc. So, like Mr. Bowman said, if you got a topic, you got 10 people or 20 people, I get a lot more time. Going through those days.
Well, I think the other point to that, and Mr. Bowling, you make this point on occasion, is about not being prejudicial about your view on things, right? To not come out and say, well, I think we should just vote like this, right? You need to be unbiased as you listen and not say, oh, I don't agree or whatever.
Here.
Yeah, right. So I think that could be, part of the reason why people don't want to comment too.
okay, well, it's something we need to work on, so let's work on it. Ms. Morse, you got a report?
Yeah, just quickly, we've been looking over, we've all received, and Chief, you have this, right? The operations plan at the county level. I've gone through it. I have a ton of questions for Chief O'Crandy. He's gonna, when we finally meet with him, he has a lot that I'm going to ask of him. But Javier is trying to set up that meeting with Chief O'Crandy. Both Javier and the chief are very busy. So I don't know when that's going to happen, but the emergency operations plan is out. The committee looked at the existing Mink Creek plan and it does not dovetail with the new version of the operations plan very well. And I had a lot of questions about that too. So I think we're going to go look at that. We don't want to write, to Eddie, to your point, and Chief Jenkins to yours as well. We don't want to write an operations plan. But what I do want is in the plan, they talk about level 1, 2, 3 engagement, right? Level 1, I think it's local. Level 2 would be getting the county involved. Level 3 would be states and feds kind of involved. So that's kind of the thinking, or at least that's what it seems to me. But what I want is a flow chart like what they have in the Mink Creek plan, is who's involved at what point. Who, how does Javier get called? If it's an incident that happens that needs a presence in town and Javier's in Charlottesville and he can't get here because of snow, then do we need a deputy incident commander or something like that? So there's a lot of flow chart issues and the triggers between what we handle locally and how it gets bumped to level 2. After that, it's the county's issue, right? So I'm not as concerned. And then how we communicate with each other, with the public, with the media, et cetera. So those are the things that the committee is looking at right now. And we've got some actions around that. So that's the big one. E911 markers. We're looking into, I'm meeting with Tim Kersley, Chief Kersley this week. We're going to do a walkthrough on the different types of properties that we have in town. So if we could give, and Alex, this would maybe affect the ARB work, is if we were going to have reflective E911 markers, which clearly identify a residence in town so that first responders know exactly where they're going to. And this is really critical when we have rural properties with multiple mailboxes on the street with no numbers or things like that, right? So what we're looking at is placement of those E911 markers. Now, it may not be as necessary for the in-town ones, but I have seen communities that do have policies that every residence and business will have an E911 marker. And we should think about the look and feel for historic properties versus just a regular residence. And so that's one thing that you may mention to the ARB.
I'll talk to them about it. I think you're gonna find, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, it's gonna come down to what the ordinances are currently. There should be something to cover that, and if there's not, it'll be up to council to push through.
Right.
Whatever we need to either make that happen.
Can you bring it up to ARB and see if there's any feeling on that? I don't think we have or do we have an ordinance? Do you know off the top?
It should just be signage.
I think there's a permitted use for signage that is for addresses and for emergencies. I can look up the code specifically. I almost remember talking to somebody like a week ago about it.
So one of my action items is to look at other historic communities to see what they do about that. But I do know, and I can't remember if it was Lynchburg or Louisa that had a policy specifically on E911 signs that every residence should have an E911 marker, those reflective markers. Some are big and some are little, like you can specify what you want. I think we went through one iteration that Eddie shared with me. They were this tall. Well, that's not going to work for historic property, right? So they do have smaller ones that you could mount. And so Tim and I are meeting to look at the different properties and where we might want to place those to give recommendation on placement of those markers. So
At least have
that's
some
the
sort of
way.
scale to build off, but I'm sure.
Look at that issue back 5 or 6 years ago, there's lots of connotation on that. You can look at what Albemarle County's done. A lot of it's required by the state, E911 requirements, which you speak.
Yeah, it's
So,
interesting.
It's been looked at. You've got an ordinance, and I think my memory is that it addresses it, maybe not 100% like
Yeah.
Albemarle County does, but I think it does address.
Well, I think there's a distinction between signage and the markings for emergency responders, right? I don't consider that necessarily signage. So we could say if the signage is broad enough, about that.
Well, the county has, again, this is just off the top of my head.
Yeah.
I think I'm right. The county has an ordinance which really focuses in on what kind of sign you can have so that it meets E911 requirements, particularly the street sign.
I see, yeah. So the difference is, Albemarle, in Fluvanna, they did it for their residents. They put them in, the Fluvanna County put them in for all the residents, as far as I know. I know Buckingham did because they did my house in Buckingham when I lived in
I
Buckingham.
think they had some state money.
But Albemarle hasn't done it. So we're looking at potentially doing something and then trying to get a grant for funding to help people, to pay for it, maybe volunteer labor. Maybe we could get a group to engage in placing them for people, et cetera. So that's where we are in that process. And those are the highlights.
Okay, Jack, do you have something, sir?
Parking lot's finished. Multiple year month project, but we have the first draft completed. First off, there's an internal map. I want to make you guys aware that this is for PD purposes. And it's not for public access, so I'm not giving that to any of the town members. Town council members is only for internal use. Javier and Chief Jenkins is the only people that are allowed, that are given access to the map. See right here? When you're in your packet, you see this colorful updated map. The last map I found was 2017 when the last one was updated. I came up with the idea of naming the park spots after the first letter of Fleet Street. So Fleet Street, F equals Fleet Street, E equals P Street, then JR equals street or access. So basically there's 6 or 5 public parkings, 6 handicap parking spots compared to the regional 2017 updated regional park map, which is of course not in color. We're hoping to do more of the event maps, parking maps for certain criteria I want to meet with the community to get better handbook at what maps want to look like. Then we want to make sure that the parking maps are accessible to the public online and also each business would hopefully get a QR code where they can scan to see where they can park and not park.
So you're gonna do a public one?
This is a public one right here, the one that.
Oh,
you
that's a
guys-
public.
This is public,
Oh, okay, so we can put that one on.
yes,
We-
but not the internal one.
Okay, I didn't see them.
And this is not online yet,
It's
Jack,
not-
right?
And we're trying to push it tonight to see.
One of the things that, I don't know if you could do this, it would be good to have like how many spaces are on P1 or, just maybe in the key.
That's a good idea.
Just to say like, okay, P1 has 50 spaces and this one has 10.
With
Just for,
Yeah,
if we're gonna
we're
make it for
gonna
the
do-
public, they know
Yeah.
where the best place to park is.
So the plan is when we have like a large July 4th event, get somebody, hopefully we could post updates of what parking spaces are available. Make sure people
Right.
can understand where not to park and what to park. Would that help with the
Yeah.
police department side, Chief Jenkins?
Who's gonna go out there and count?
I have the account already.
Okay.
And this really doesn't take into account street park.
No.
Okay. So that'd be good to know. Didn't you say, I think you counted them one time, there's like
Well,
280,
we lost, like-
280 or
Yeah, we
300,
lost because of police. Going back, yeah, it's like 200.
270 parking
Yeah.
spaces in town or something.
Minus the on one at the.
Because this doesn't take into account the
No.
churches either, right?
Churches have to be, I discovered that they're all private parking, they're not public parking.
Yeah, but
So-
except for events, they're.
Yeah,
pretty
yeah,
much
for the
open.
church only.
Yeah.
The town owns all the parking spots. Except for the big ones around our schools, is that right?
That's,
That's the parking lot. for
Yeah, I
the-
think- I
P1,
think you're
are you
right.
referring to
I think
P1?
The
Eddie?
rest are public.
So that's really Albemarle County.
Right.
So how can we put that on our map when
is
do we have an agreement with them? or-
probably, do we ever remove them?
I mean, you
P1
got-
and P2 would be like that, because P2 is the library.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's right.
I cut out private land that has served often as public parking for that same reason.
Mhm.
I can always touch base with Albemarle to make sure, but I've never seen any issue with parking down there.
Because people park there all the time.
Yeah, they park there all the time, but this is a map of the Scottsville parking. If they ought to
be an asterisk, somewhere that says, town, doesn't own this. I mean.
Well, P1 is starred, but I don't see why
Starting with
P1,
handicap parking. If you look at the key,
Oh.
it says handicap parking accessibility.
2 stars.
yeah, you have
That-
2 stars here, Jack,
Oh,
that
yeah.
should be, yeah, that
Like
should
that.
be changed to be.
Yeah, I know that, that. A lot of times, we have groups come into town and they utilize their parking lot, Albemarle County, has been, good to let us use it.
Mhm.
Never heard any problems down there. But it's not there.
Well, it'd be good to have some kind of agreement, a formal agreement with the county, right? And then we can put an asterisk and say, this is county parking, but they graciously allow us to use that.
Did you back put it in the note?
Yeah, I'm gonna figure out how to do that, so it fits in this type of frame. So this template came out of big idea, so I'm gonna start using it on the fall of our term apps.
As long as they're more kind of not saying anything, I can just say anything to them.
Yes.
Instead of separating town parking versus county.
Yeah, that's a good idea,
Parking,
right?
public parking.
And don't say it's Scottsville or
Does-
Albemarle.
So your park owned by the town, or is that county park?
Yeah, no, that's,
This kind of,
What is it?
yeah, that's county.
and then you cut those little 4 strips of the lot.
Yeah.
Not much,
No.
yeah.
That might be what I do.
Alright.
Available park, public parking. And don't designate it Scottsville or Albemarle. That may just take that, and not have to ask.
Yeah. They can't even know what we.
Don't call
Put
for
my 50 cents in.
Any other questions?
While Jack's sitting here, I want to just publicly thank him for the weather updates over the last couple of days. Got
Yeah.
that heading this way tomorrow.
We have one coming Saturday, so the school's already.
Saturday.
School's already closing for tomorrow already, due to the high winds.
And the other
What?
thing, I was visiting my daughter in Nevada back, for Christmas and at 5:45, the phone rang, which it was 8:45 here, and it was Jack telling me about the Lucky's, grease fire. So I
Yeah,
appreciate that. It didn't, it was not an inconvenience. Thank you so much for
Welcome.
keeping us up to
It's
date.
like 10 minutes that happened at that place
And
so far in a couple of years.
Javier talked to Tim Carr and understood, from him that the, suppression equipment worked. And it was out before the fire department got there, so
oh,
that was good to know, because we had just discussed suppression equipment previous.
that's right.
So thank you again, Jack, I appreciate all you do. I see, you got anything on parks and rec you want to pass on at this point, or is there anything we need to save for later?
The only thing is I sent the minutes, just a couple things that we'll eventually touch on because it'll probably cost some money. As we're getting drafts of the park map. We have drafts of the park rules, which we have to print and it'll cost a little bit of money. Another item is that the handicap dock needs some work and that's gonna make it a handicap accessible. And the last thing, it might cost, we'll get some, whether we get it or not, we asked for a tourist grant, but we haven't heard back if they're still interested in doing that because, it's $20,000 for, which we could use in the park, but, I don't know if it's been withdrawn or whatever, but, so that's still up in the air, but anyway, we're making some good progress with the park, to get it up to speed or at least maintain it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of good out there.
Two issues about the park. One is handicap accessibility, which Javier gets 1 or 2 phone calls a week from people that have a concern about that. And the other is that the $20,000 is long gone, so
It is.
we're not gonna get that.
What was it for?
It was just withdrawn because they couldn't figure out.
I thought we had till the summer.
I talked to you last week about it. They were concerned about how shovel ready and how committed we were to our master plan, including accessibility. So that's my assumption why the communication slowed down. He does want to work with us a lot about continuing to work on grants together. So unfortunately, that one,
Yeah, that's surprising. Well, maybe just let them know we're interested next year if they need more information, because I think, we talked about it. We had a lot of, and he came out and visited, spent a couple hours out there. It's kind of all of a sudden, I don't know why they, it would be good to have an explanation a little bit to the committee.
yeah, he talked to Brian and me about it.
You
too.
did?
Yeah.
Okay, so he'll bring it up at our meeting then. Okay.
Yes, I asked him to report back to you guys too.
Okay.
Since you'll all be there.
Okay,
To the mayor's point, like, for example, today I got a phone call
Yeah.
from a fisherman who wants us to improve our accessibility.
Yeah.
I'm thinking next month if we could talk about perhaps changes to our park policy and then looking at what our capital improvements or maintenance for the park. He called and he was really sympathetic to the point that he would even help with us to improve it a little bit. I don't want to kind of spitball now, but
Yeah,
for example, like today I got a call and I think we can just change some park policy and also, like Bill said, improve that floating
Yeah.
dock and you'll get people, instead of having to
Yeah.
go counties
Yeah.
out, they'll stay local
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
fish, especially with the trap we fill it
Yeah.
up with.
okay, I mean, even in the master plan, it says that it'll never be totally handicap accessible. It'll be partially handicapped. And that's what we were trying to get with the grant, get it partially handicap accessible, but so, I think it's just the reality that it's not going to be that and hasn't been that for 10 years, so it's going to be a long haul to do that,
Yeah.
to make it fully, and I don't think it'll ever be fully because of the terrain.
Parks don't use the word handicap, like
Yeah,
DWR
right.
uses more
ADA,
acceptable
yeah,
right.
for that, or ADA,
Yeah.
they don't.
oh, yeah,
So it's like in the same way that like you walking down the sidewalk's very different from you taking a hike. We should think of that as an equivalent. In
Right.
regards to making it more accessible.
yeah,
But ADA has clear guidelines for spaces like that.
well, it's changed, they could be partially handicap accessible now, actually ADA accessible.
Parks are a
That's-
little bit
that's
more
what-
complicated.
That's what he sent us information on, so just putting gravel down would be acceptable,
Right.
yeah, it
Great.
doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be a.
Doesn't have to be
switchback
paved,
Paved, right,
but it does have to be some surface that a wheelchair or
Right.
a assistive device
Well,
could.
it depends upon the grade too.
Yes.
And because
Yeah.
if you're having a park and you have, it's a fairly rugged, they're fairly rugged
Right.
places. in the
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can't really expect, in that kind of terrain to have it accessible for everybody.
Yeah.
It's just
I mean,
not-
even that slope just going from, when you go in behind, Doug's right there, to get up to the lake. Maybe a push
Yeah.
wheelchair, I couldn't imagine somebody in a wheelchair, even paved getting themselves.
Yeah, no, you'd have to park at the top and then come in that way, right? You
Yeah.
can't, I don't
Yeah,
think you
maybe
can get that.
coming
Right.
in from the top, I couldn't imagine,
You have to grade out that
Yeah.
part.
yeah.
Past the fence.
know,
That's
one-
the gate.
One of the things they had in one of these videos he sent us that I thought would be worth looking into and would probably be reasonable is to get a wheelchair, hiking wheelchair, and some of those are motorized.
Yeah,
And, just like we might have a truck ourselves that could take people down. But these wheelchair, they could drive them down there and they go over any terrain and they can come right down to the dock and drive back. That might,
yeah, they
That
have
would-
a lot of different models of
so that would
wheelchairs.
be-
They're beach
that might be a
wheelchairs.
shortcut too. For that.
Well, an issue with liability wise, if it's our equipment,
That's
it
true.
might be better to
We'd
have
have to-
somebody that's on call.
Yeah,
has,
right,
Golf cart.
Right,
Gator or something.
exactly, a gator.
Well,
Yeah.
and could you,
Carrying in and out, but if you call that a
Right.
plan, that's our effort, rather than having something that they're independently doing.
That's a good idea.
but if you had something that says it is accessible to these types of wheelchairs, that's an improvement over what we have. Because some of these wheelchairs,
They're good.
I know the one my daughter has, actually can move over terrain pretty well.
Mm.
But some of them are customized for outdoor activities. So you would be able to traverse certain paths. I mean, not super steep, but they're geared like mountain bikes, right? They have different types of tires and different types of motors and things like that. So I think one step towards improvement would be at least enabling it for that type of device. And then say, okay,
Yeah.
well, step
Yeah.
one,
Yeah.
right?
When the Virginia agency that gave you a grant years ago for a dock.
Yeah.
That dock was supposed to be handicapped accessible.
Yeah,
They essentially
right.
welched on the deal.
right.
Right,
Because of-
exactly.
Because of the money. And or they found somewhere else place to spend it. Now they want to give you a floating dock, which is a different issue, and don't want to give you the money to make it accessible.
Yeah.
Am I correct?
Well, I think they expected the town to do the other part, but I think the dock itself could be, ADA accessible. But the terrain itself, it was on us, but we shouldn't have accepted, you're right, we probably shouldn't have accepted it because we didn't complete the deal.
Well, they didn't, you accepted it, but then they didn't give you the grant.
You're right.
Remember the history,
Mhm.
right, Mr. Mayor?
So anyhow, it's a good topic that needs some further discussion, and I'm sure we'll get to some point in time where we will at least somewhat solve our problems there.
Right.
We all work together. Mr. Treasurer,
So what I'll share with you is, next month, I'll provide a little bit of information on, our 6-month point well, this month I'll provide a 6-month review next month, because we'll share out our December financial statement. And then I think February would be a good time to start talking about any anything we want to do with the second half of this fiscal year. And then start jumping it a little bit into the next budget season. We'll be running up to the end of the fiscal year, quicker than we always imagine. So in anticipation, the Government Services Committee has helped me with we call it a capital plan, but it's a larger expense and project, Excel, which, has provided some input for the capital, improvement plan that is required to be included in our, comp plan. But that first step of just getting an idea of everything we've aspired to work on in the next few years really helps out with that kind of groundwork, start jump into our budget. So I can provide a little bit of information. Well, Lincoln will provide a little bit on the CIP for the comp plan specifically. And then I want to share a little bit on what I had formulated as a new topic towards the end. And then maybe take that opportunity to talk about any kind of collaboration and what we want on my side compared to last year. And that will kind of help me as the next couple of months come up and then we move through our budget process.
Javier, notionally, are we tracking
Yes.
to budget? So we're about halfway through our,
So when the December, look at that right column and look at 50% and then start asking yourself where you land on that, be it revenue or expenses.
okay. Thank you.
any questions for the treasurer?
You have to. Can be wrong here, but I believe you're a new supervisor, correct?
Yeah, he's next on the agenda. Yeah, that's my report is to introduce the new county supervisor, Mike Pruitt. Going up for a few minutes and he and Javier and I had a nice meeting this afternoon for about an hour. We talked about the things that we have done with the county, the things that we need to do with the county and the things that we are concerned about the county not doing. So I'll just turn it over to Supervisor Pruitt and he will be the guy you call with your complaints or your.
That's quite an introduction.
We have his, email?
Sir.
We have his email.
That's mpruitt@albemarle.org.
Okay.
And you can
We've
also
got it
just,
here, Javier's got it, he's got ours.
two T's, PRUITT. Thank you so much. You can find my county cell phone number also on my county webpage. I ain't committed to memory yet, so I apologize for that. Thank you so much for making the time to allow me to introduce myself to everyone. I think that my predecessor, Supervisor Price, has done a really good job of improving relationships significantly with the town of Scottsville and really establishing some really great norms. Supervisor Price did an incredible job in her role as supervisor, and that's something I really hope to fully step into her shoes over the next 4 years, hopefully of my term. So that includes very much like seeing the role of the town of Scottsville through that support and command model that she would sometimes mention. Myself, a former Navy officer, much like Supervisor Price, that's something that very much resonates with me. That means I have no intention of trying to step on the ability of Scottsville to supervise and chart its own destiny, right? That is not the role of the county to try and impose any will on what is the role of the county. How I interpret that is to support and make sure that the town of Scottsville has all the resources and all the support it needs into realizing the best version of itself as set forth, you know, and guided by the folks here at this building. That is very much the role I hope to kind of fill for y'all. Hope to be someone that you can turn to in order to get things smoothed over with the county, to get things moving, and to get the support that you need. Just in the, you know, brief full time I've been sitting here in the seats, I've already written down 2 things that I want to make sure we follow up with. We don't have P911 signs, but our neighboring counties do, question mark. MOU for parking with town, question mark. So these seem like very simple things, but these are the kind of basic services I think that I could be making sure I'm providing for the town of Scottsville. And I hope to fully avail myself of all. So thank you all so much for your time. And if there are any questions.
Not a question, but a request, and I wrote the county about this twice. There's some temporary signs that seem to stay up forever. Some of them are just for sale or whatever, but the one I'm most concerned about across the street from the Truist Bank has lots of signs that I think they were political signs, and they're on a fence there, and that's the entrance corridor of town, and it's just really, it's okay, I think, for 30 days or something like that. I think they should be taken down immediately, or whatever, follow the guidelines of Albemarle. And there's a couple of commercial signs that are up too, and I wrote them about that too, but I just think that, you know, such a beautiful area and this rural area, and, you know, it's really undefined where Scottsville begins and where Albemarle ends, and though that's Albemarle, so we have no jurisdiction over that. So anyway, you know what I'm talking about?
Are you talking about the specific residents that have?
Yes, yes, it's on a fence and it's on the, and I wrote about that, and I know that's not legal. It's there's a picture of Trump, and you know, that's fine, maybe next year at this time, but you know, I don't think it should be there all year long.
Our town ordinance says you can put political signs up 30 days before the election, but they have to come down 2 weeks after. Most people observe that. There's 1 or 2 that want to leave them up there. This guy's in your jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not our jurisdiction.
No.
That's Albemarle County.
It's right over the county,
That's the.
or right on the town line.
Right, so anything that.
And- Their house
You
is-
got great views from both sides.
I didn't realize that was the.
That's the stopping point.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
why John Snoddy had to resign from council because he bought the house across from the cemetery. Okay, so.
Wrong side of the
There's
tracks.
some smaller ones. Up and down, you don't see them in Alamo, but you see them.
Yeah, there's a few over, like if you cut through, go down Hayden Martin Road and cut through over on Slayer's Ford Road, there's a couple of houses over there that have had political signs from 2016.
Yeah, I know, I've seen it.
Still.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
This is an area that I'm just gonna admit, a government job, I don't know
yeah,
the
no, I know,
county policy on this cold. I know a little bit about what the county policy is for posting them in easement,
Yeah.
because that was something I
Yeah.
was doing myself. But posting them on private property in people's yards, that's not something I'm familiar with.
Yeah.
So I would need to look into what our policy is on that, and I'll try to get back to you.
just let Javier know and he'll put the word up.
Sure thing.
Any other questions for Supervisor Pruitt?
thank you,
Yeah, I appreciate you hanging around. He was, we had our meeting at 1 o'clock at Baines's and he's still here, so. We appreciate your time and your effort, and we will certainly pick up the phone or shoot you an email with any questions that we have.
Thank you so much. And if you don't mind, I'm just gonna take my seat and enjoy the rest of the meeting.
Welcome.
The only other thing I have here is we have been talking about personnel matters, and we have to do some reviews of our town administrator and our maintenance department, and I'd like to have a special session on January 24th. This will be a closed session for those reviews and evaluations and discussions. And we need to take a vote on that date, or can we just, can I just assign it as a date? Okay, everybody free on the 24th?
What time?
I don't know.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, let's just do 7.
7, okay.
Gives everybody a chance.
Yeah, I'm good.
But what day of the week?
That's on a Wednesday, isn't it? Yeah, it'll be a Wednesday.
Yes, it's a Wednesday.
Okay,
I'll check.
then we'll get those matters out of the way. And, anybody has any questions for me, I'll try to answer them. If not, we'll move on to our town attorney. He can tell us about recodification.
How about that?
How about that?
Yeah, it looks like next Monday, if the town council deems it appropriate, you're going to pass the ordinance recodifying the current town code. Which has been in existence since the late 1990s, as a result, is seriously archaic. Keep in mind that a recodification is not a change of any substantive provisions of the town code. What it does is correct, if you will, the numerous references to items in that code which are no longer accurate, such as Virginia Code statutory sites, which is that themselves been recodified, many of them, dates, times, and places, and so forth. But no substantive events took place, at least as far as I know, in the changing of that ordinance, of those kinds of the recodification process. There are a couple of places we found some obvious deficiencies and errors, and I'll give you one good example. The town code has an ordinance provision which says that the Albemarle County Fire Marshal shall be the fire marshal for the town of Scottsville. And there's provisions to carry that out. And in the process of doing the recodification, we discovered that the town council decided that it didn't want the Albemarle County Fire Marshal to be its fire marshal, so they amended it, so we'll just take that away. But you couldn't tell that by reading your current printed town code. But now the town really doesn't have a fire marshal.
Yeah, I was
That's
gonna ask
something
that.
that's going, that maybe town administrator may be bringing that matter to your attention.
Brought it up today and tomorrow. I'll talk with staff and talked with staff a few weeks ago, so.
And right now you have the state fire marshal is your fire marshal. You can obviously see the problems with
Mhm.
that arrangement whenever you actually need the services of the fire marshal. I suspect that you just have to go outside this building and look up and down the street and see how close the buildings are together, and how many of them there are, that you seriously have to make sure that your town facilities are meeting the current fire codes. But in any event, that's an example of one of the things that's done as part of the recodification process. I asked Javier how much time he estimates Matt and he spent on this, and he said probably close to 20 hours. Myself, I spent 3 full mornings talking to the lawyer who assisted us from Florida on the telephone, and 1 full afternoon. So I'm probably 15 to 20 hours myself. And then we all had to labor in our spare time through 600 plus pages of fascinating.
Yeah, good reading.
And so if you decide to pass the ordinance next Monday, or Tuesday,
Next Tuesday.
next Tuesday.
So remind
Then within 7 days or so, certainly by the end of the month, you should have that thing up on your website. So now everybody will be able to finally see what actually the town has as far as its laws are concerned. So I find this pretty exciting. So, and I thank you for having the wisdom to expend the money to go through this process.
Questions for Mr. Bowling? Thank you for all your hard work, both of you. Mr. Administrator, you want to take item 2C?
Yeah, so as Dan hinted at, Lincoln Lewis has been working on, as part of our comp plan update, one new requirement from the state is to include a capital improvement plan. We shared that draft with planning commission last Wednesday. We had a special session to get a day off in between New Year's. And then we thought that it would be prudent to share it also with town council. So Lincoln's joining us from either Panera or from the UVA sometimes. But if Lincoln, I have your presentation up, I can make you co-host if that's easier.
Okay, great, Javier. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you, Town Council, for letting me speak tonight. And Happy New Year. As Dan and Javier mentioned, we do have to talk about this capital improvement program tonight. It's a great opportunity because it's one more piece of the puzzle we're putting together for the comp plan. And as was mentioned, we do have a draft Word document of the comp plan, and once that's really ready to share, we'll flag that for you, especially Ms. Morse. Thank you so much. Okay, so Javier, maybe we move on to slide 2.
Yeah, here, let me screen share real quick. Sorry about that, Lincoln.
Thanks so much. So a capital improvement program is really a prioritization process for the town. And I have some information on the subsequent slides introducing really what a capital improvement program or a CIP is and how I think the town can leverage this for their comp plan, but also for maybe their yearly budgetary process. It can really aid that. So why a CIP? Well, first of all, based on Code of Virginia, it's required to be included in a comprehensive plan. And Scottsville's previous comp plans haven't had one before. So this is an excellent opportunity to really add one into our comp plan document. And besides the expenses that it really is to cover and forecast for the town, it can also include capital revenue. That might not be the case for Scottsville, but just to explain that if Scottsville had income from housing projects or public facilities, significant income, that could be included in this program too. So at the bottom of this slide, I also mentioned what's the difference between a capital improvement program and a capital budget. Well, a CIP really follows the sequencing of the comp plan, have to update it about every 5 years, and really has a horizon looking 5 or more years into the future. Whereas a capital budget really only looks at a yearly approach. And I understand the town is starting the budgetary process for next fiscal year quite soon. So basically, I understand that Scottsville really hasn't been looking at a capital improvement program before, but I do know that the Government Services Committee has been doing some work informally, and we used some of that information to create this draft document. Okay, Javier, if you could just advance the slide. Thanks so much. The slide number 3. Okay, so I just pulled up this citation of the Code of Virginia. And as I mentioned, this capital improvement program only needs to be updated every 5 years or whenever the comp plan is updated. But if town council so wishes, they can require the planning commission to submit to them an updated capital improvement program every year. So we talked with the planning commission last week, and basically we're going to propose in the comp plan that the planning commission will update this CIP during the 3rd quarter of each fiscal year. So give the updated CIP to you about this time every year, and then this can funnel into your budgetary process. Okay, next slide, Javier, if we may. Okay, so next question is, why should we start looking at expenditures on a long-term basis? Well, it really is a process of involving residents and keeping them informed and making sure that their expectations can be met. It's also a prioritization process, like I mentioned, and it helps to forecast these long-term costs. And so they can also match the anticipated growth of the town or the needs of the town. And this also can encourage the town to look for certain grant applications or other revenue opportunities to pay for things in the long-term future. Okay, next slide, if we may. So basically, we have a definition here for what could be included in this capital improvement program. And through discussions over the last week or so, several people thought that maybe we should be very clear on the definition and also more specific include infrastructure in this document. So we're proposing that it's not only a CIP, but it's an ICIP. Of course, the name doesn't really matter. It's really what's included in it. But what should be perhaps suitable to go in this document is, whatever a cost is that's essential for the town. It has a long-term useful life of 5 years or more. It's not recurring or repeated or maintenance related. And it needs to have a significant value. For instance, here we have $2,000 or greater. So it's not individual light bulbs. It's not repainting buildings which would be more maintenance related. And it's not really paying for a new mower or a new truck, because that would be really replacement of something that's already there. It's not really bringing any new value to the town. Okay, so through these discussions we've had in the last week, we need to have this clear definition, and I have the capital improvement program I've sent to Javier as a PDF. Don't know if you had a chance to print it off, Javier.
Yes.
But okay, great. Well, there may be a difference between an IRS definition of capitalized assets and a capital improvement. So perhaps the town should not consider those things to be the same thing, because they can be quite different in some instances. Also, next item I have there, have a separate tracking system for recurrent and maintenance related items, and also police items. So Javier and I have talked, and me myself, I'm going to only focus on the infrastructure and other things that are related to the comp plan, but he's going to keep a really diligent tally of those recurrent and maintenance related items, and of course the Chief Jenkins will feed in the police items for your budgetary processes. Okay, and like this Excel file that I just mentioned, we put the definition of what should be considered this capital improvement program and infrastructure in the top right hand corner for future reference. Okay, Javier, if we could go to the next slide. Okay, so these are just some other future considerations, because sometimes it is a little bit of a gray area. What is a capital improvement? For instance, a new roof. Let's say you want to put a new roof on the farmer's market. Would that be a capital improvement, or would be that replacement costs? So whoever's doing it at that time really needs to go through this list and make a decision. Okay, but really, if you go down the bullet points here, maybe this item has a legal mandate, for instance, like a accessibility issue for the ADA. Could be regarding public safety and health. It could be very important during a pandemic, for instance, at a certain cost. Does it align with the strategic plan? Does it align with the comprehensive plan? Does it really align with the environmental sustainability, the stewardship principle that we're hopefully going to write in the comp plan? And how does it extend existing capital, or how does it impact the operational budget? For instance, maybe something will be really great for the town, but in the long run, the maintenance costs could be really high and affect other parts of the budget. So these are all considerations. Okay, Javier, if we could move on to the next slide. This is the actual snippet of the Excel file. So I'll just run through the main aspects of how this is organized, okay? So in the top right-hand corner, you can see where Javier had the cursor. These are just different color codings of potential ways that some of these items could be paid. So for instance, you might have heard about this electric vehicle charging. This is being termed here as a public-private partnership. It's not really costing the town anything. The town is just providing some space for the private company to provide electrical charging for electrical vehicles. There's other things that University of Virginia could partner with. I'll highlight that in a second. The Virginia Housing has already highlighted a potential grant for us that could be good to help us rewrite part of our zoning ordinance regarding housing. So that could be free. And then also we have some other VDOT money that could be coming, depending on what is classified in the comp plan. Okay, Javier, if we could move to the left-hand side of the slide. So moving from top to bottom, this is organized by the goals of the comp plan. And of course, these are draft goals, but this is what we're working with right now. First goal is to build out infrastructure. So moving down from that, we have everything having to do with roads, then things having to do with public safety, which includes video cameras, AEDs, which is automated external defibrillators for your heart attacks, for instance. And then vehicle security bollards. We understand that that's been raised several times for the farmers market as a security concern. And of course, these are not police items, but they're having to do with infrastructure of buildings or facilities. Moving down to the last portion of this infrastructure is really the electrical. We received some feedback to just consider whether Victory Hall would need a generator in the long term, because it is an important building for the town. And also we received feedback, what about the Victory Hall electrical wiring? Should that be checked for capacity in the longer term future? Okay. Moving down to goal number 2 is enable housing choices. So I'll just mention here that other comp plans that we've referenced, for instance, Charlottesville just recently updated their CIP, and also Fluvanna County recently updated their CIP. And they have a lot of money for housing. Scottsville, of course, does not. But what I mentioned earlier is this update of zoning ordinances and policies. This could be entirely paid for by Housing Virginia, that state agency that I've mentioned before. So this would be perhaps a free $25,000. And the officers, when they came to visit Scottsville a few months ago, they mentioned that no one has ever applied for this grant to help update housing ordinances. So we could be the first town to do that. Okay, moving on to goal 3, create community connections. And this is really about enlivening public space and increasing walkability. So I received really good feedback recently about Van Cleve Nature Preserve Master Plan. Question was whether it was a good time to update the Van Cleve Master Plan. And we talked about it with the Planning Commission last week. And we thought, yes, it is a good time to recommend updating the Van Cleve Nature Preserve Master Plan, because it had a lot to do with walkability and connections to the potential East Village development in the northeast of town. So that update of that Van Cleve Nature Preserve Master Plan could be within this $25,000 for the planning study and walkability connections. Because what we know previously from town, there was a sidewalk study proposal to connect uptown to downtown through or nearby Dollar General, but that was almost $1 million of sidewalk, right? And the town really doesn't have $1 million, even if it's co-financed with VDOT or other agencies. So we have to start chipping away at these costs and have a plan in the long term. I'll mention a little bit more about that later, but we keep on going down to goal 4 is really demonstrate value and have fiscal well-being. So I've already talked with some folks at UVA, the Weldon Cooper Center, and they're willing to discuss maybe doing a regional economic study. And you might have heard me talking about this previously, but this is really to quantify how Scottsville serves as a hub, not only for Albemarle County, but also for rural Fluvanna and also Buckingham County, right? So what I've heard is that there's a lot of discussions county by county, but Scottsville has not really been able to see how many people does it really serve, and how can we maybe get more funding or such by demonstrating that value. So that could be $15,000 there or such. But again, that might not be a cost to the town. That might be able to be paid for by the Weldon Cooper Center at UVA. The last thing I'll mention here about demonstrating value and fiscal well-being, the Planning Commission had a great idea last week of potentially adding the cost of a grant writer, a part-time grant writer to the budget. And this is just earmarked at $10,000 per year. But perhaps if you spend $10,000, but you get 1 or 2 grants per year, that grant writer could more than pay for themselves well over. So that's one thing that the comp plan will be proposing to the town council about. Consider maybe adding a part-time grant writer when needed, yeah. Okay, so I'll just move down to the bottom here, and these are some estimated, costs based on inflation. So we can't really think about this as a 2023 money all the time. If you add up all these things in the bottom right-hand corner, all these things on this list would be about 1.7, $1.8 million. Of course, that's a lot of money. And even if you look at the bottom, there's also inflation added in every year, about 2.5%. Of course, 2.5% is very generous because inflation is a little bit higher than that now, but other years it might be lower. And again, this is just a forecast. A lot of these numbers here are just estimates, and they're really a roadmap to prioritization. Okay, so if you look at the top here, you can see year 0 is our current fiscal year. So Javier and I sat down and we really calculated up how much money is the town using this year on these items. So we estimate that's about $16,000 only. So if we go over to the next year, this 5-year horizon that I mentioned, year 1, we propose around $87,000 if you want all of those items. Year 2, once we start looking at intersections, improving roads, so on and so forth, that could be much more expensive. So I'll just go back to the road infrastructure just to mention a little bit more, because those are big items. So at the top left-hand corner, we talked about signage for the roads, but also welcome signage, because we got feedback earlier in our engagement process. The welcome signage for the town could be larger and more welcoming. Okay, then we've received feedback, and also through our discussions with VDOT, that the town might really need to look at some intersections. And we understand through the discussions with the Albemarle County, for instance, and their data, that 2 intersections that are really of concern are Route 20 and James River Road, and Route 20 and Hardware Street. These will be ever more problematic areas if there's more housing in the East Village that comes up, or for instance, the new gas station, the Tiger fuel station at Route 20 and James River Road could really add a lot of capacity constraints to that intersection. And you know how the intersection is also kind of on a hump, and it's limited visibility. So again, not all these costs might be bared by the town. That's why they're highlighted in blue. But what we learned from VDOT is, first you really have to have a study, and then that will help you get grants to pay for infrastructure, such as improving intersections. And these are just earmarked amounts just to have a placeholder there until a study would be done. Okay, and then there's other things that we're working on the comp plan, like designated community planning area, that can help us get more VDOT grants to pay for this. Okay, so that's just a quick overview on this. I'd be glad to answer any questions or explain more.
Yeah, I got a question for you real quick. What would the town's commitment to this be as far as it being kind of law in our budgetary eyes? Is this just kind of a roadmap where we want to be, or is this going to be spending that we're committed to doing?
Yeah, this is
If
just
it's
a
part of the
roadmap.
comp plan,
I mean, that if we have to factor this, beyond just this is a good idea, we want to see these things done. Are we
Put it in-
actually allocating money for this?
No, when you put it in the comp plan, it's like a wish list.
Right.
This is what we want to do. This is what we're heading for.
that's the direction we're
But
moving
we're
in.
not under any obligation to do it. It's our dream of what we want to do over the next 5 years.
So we could change these numbers as we go through.
Well,
Well, once the comp plan is
not after the
approved,
comp
it's
plan
not,
approved, you can't change.
yeah,
it.
you can't change the
it
number.
For the comp plan.
But you would
Yeah.
change it in budgetary cycles. Do you want to do that or not? It would be used as
Okay.
input into the budgetary process. And then you could vote to, well, we might not be able to spend this amount this year. How about we allocate a little bit? But it does indicate a set of priorities for financial
We
considerations.
could add priorities, though, right? We could add priorities. which-
Well, if you want it to be in the comp plan, I suggest give feedback to Lincoln, and then they can decide
Yeah,
if they want to improve.
Because there's some other things that probably need to look at.
as long as you don't lock yourself in so that if you have something that you absolutely have to plan for, that you hadn't thought of before.
Yeah,
In the next year or two, and you have to go through the rigmarole of amending the comp plan. When you don't have the time to do it
Okay.
because you absolutely have to do this, that's what, I
mhm,
guess that's a concern.
Well, I mean, if this is notional, right? I wouldn't see why you'd have to, that would be part of the budgetary process, wouldn't it?
It would, but it would be in the nature of an emergency appropriation, that kind of thing. And you, for example, let's say you had something major to go on with your levies.
Right,
You just had to fix, no questions about it.
right.
But then the comp plan, I'm just trying to figure out, if you put it in the comp plan, then you have to go through the rigmarole of changing the comp plan.
And that's,
Mr. Bowling?
Yes,
Mr. Bowling, one of the things that Lincoln, this is Dan, checking in, one of the things that Lincoln was pointing out in the code was he pointed out in the code that this has been a requirement before that we have missed, so to speak. So Lincoln, could you explain that again? And Mr. Bowling, could you comment on that? Because I do think this point of law would like your opinion or your understanding on it. Again, we all know this is just visionary,
right,
but
but
it
that's
is
the,
important.
let me interrupt you. The trouble with the comp plan is aspiration, okay?
Mhm.
Not fixed in stone.
Right.
so,
Right.
so,
well, this seems like it would be a better, and this is totally out of my ignorance of both of these topics. It seems like it'd be a better budgetary tool to keep separate from the comp plan.
So I keep a longer, more extensive list
Yeah,
that I'm gonna show later and I print it out.
Okay.
For the same reason, like it helps us track.
but as Lincoln mentioned, I think this has been required and has been drafted in, other comp plans. So we haven't done that in the past, so correct me if I'm wrong, it's my impression that this was our first attempt to get this into our comp plan so that at least we have some notional strategic direction for spend over the next, N years. And it doesn't even have to be, 1 to 5, it could be even longer. We could elongate some of that.
I got you.
Exactly. So Mr. Heisen or others, I'd be glad to sit down and hear your concerns. And we can work with Javier and see what list they go on, these expenses go on.
I think that the financial requirements are more in the nature of huge capital requirements, such as new roads and that sort of
right,
thing.
baby.
And not nitty gritty that you're seeing here, but I could be wrong, this is all off the cuff. So,
Well, I think the nice thing about this is it allows us to capture sort of these big things that are multi-year that we can't do in 1 year, that we may want to set targets for over 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is. I think, and I know Dan has mentioned, the Van Cleef dock didn't happen overnight, right? There was we want it, and then over the years, there were discussions and certain plans which eventually led to that occurring. This is a way to capture those things that we think we want to keep our eye on the ball for improvements as we move forward. So, I mean, I think it's a good tool, but I don't think it binds us in any way for funding.
okay, I think that's well put.
Other questions for Mr. Lewis? Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, Mayor, if I may, I just have 2 more slides at the end talking about community
Oh, okay.
engagement with the youth. So I just wanted to illustrate what Dan mentioned earlier to show some great photos. So this is when the Boys and Girls Club came to Town Hall in December. So basically, Dan, Javier, and I walked them from the Boys and Girls Club across the levee and also to the pump house to share a little bit about the flood control measure of the town. And then we brought them to the council chambers, and Ms. Morse joined us, and we had a fabulous discussion with them, really explaining to them about town governance, but also hearing their thoughts and concerns for the town long term. And they even elected their mayor. This is the young lady in the middle of the photo at the top. So she kept the meeting in order, and throughout the meeting, we found out that they're really concerned about what restaurants are in town. So decided to vote on fast food. So they basically, they had a lot of good concerns. Some of them mentioned that maybe fast food is not the best type of food that they can eat, so on and so forth. But they basically decided that Cane's Chicken would be their recommendation for fast food. But, other things that we heard from them, they're concerned about housing. One gentleman said his family was really concerned about housing affordability. Others were talking about the grocery store, so on and so forth. So I've written down all the notes from them, and I'm gonna, include that in the comp plan. And Javier, if we could go to the next slide, we're gonna have the Scottsville Elementary students come to Town Hall to do a similar exercise on 23rd of January. That'd be a Tuesday at 9:45 in the morning. If we have 2 or 3 town councilors that are available, that would be really a wonderful opportunity for you to engage with the 3rd graders. The principal, Miss Wells, came and she thought 3rd grade integrates really well with what we're going to be talking with them about. And miraculously, their 3rd grade curriculum really talks about watershed, but also representative government. So the levee, the pumps really work well together with what we're going to be explaining to them in the town council chambers. And we're going to do the little map activity where they think sidewalks are great in town, where they could be improved. We're also going to give them a little office tour. So that's just a quick overview. So hopefully a few of you can join us. I'll send around an email. Thanks so much.
Okay, again,
Thank you, Lincoln.
National Book Day. Do you want to address that, or you want to help there, or you want?
Yeah, I don't know. Do we have to, so my first question is, before I do this, do we have to vote on these events? How do these get approved, or do they just?
If you want to sit down and if you need any money or resources, I think you just have a budget for them already.
Okay.
We do have a budget for it? I just wondered how much
Town,
is there a budget?
Tourism budget,
yeah.
What is the budget for?
smaller this year, it's 9,000. from
For
14,000.
for events?
Yeah, so I talked with Amelie about it a little bit. There's some stuff you can pull and work a little bit. I couldn't invest a whole bunch and stay within budget.
Right.
Honestly, I dropped in and Bateau and 4th of July was just the ones we spent our events budget on. And it's mostly 4th of July since it's kind of our big party.
We have a lot of local authors.
She's reached out to them.
For what?
Yeah.
For offers for what?
Well, we have a very good working relationship with a lot of them too. I don't know which one she's.
Well, she's talked to Kristen
Oh,
about getting them. So first of all, I want to say, Amelie apologizes. She was in the hospital yesterday. We took a lovely ambulance ride, which was not fun. So she couldn't be here today. So I asked about the voting because I don't know if I don't want to talk about it if it comes up for vote because it would be a conflict of interest. If it doesn't have to come up for vote, then I'm happy to address it.
What, is it a conflict of interest?
Well, I mean, if it's a vote and there's appropriations and things like that, wouldn't that be if I'm voting on something that my daughter is sponsoring?
I think it's only a conflict of interest if you are
Getting money.
getting money.
Money.
for it. Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
That's not a conflict of.
No,
interest.
but I would see that approval for money and things like that would be a
But-
conflict. I would view that as.
But for example, if you're going to vote on giving Amelie $10,000, that's a conflict of interest, and you can't vote on it or even talk about it.
Right.
But is that what you're talking about?
Well, I mean, she's not asking for $10,000, but I still think,
That's
we
not much
talked
money
about
from her.
some of the things that Alex couldn't talk about that didn't involve $10,000.
I know, but.
Although it is as
But-
I understand it's zoning ordinance, but
But.
I just want to be careful and be
I
sure.
understand, but I'm just.
However it goes, I don't care. I'm happy to speak about it, right? I just want to make sure I don't do anything
I
wrong.
just don't want you to pigeonhole everything as a conflict, is what I'm trying to say, because a lot of things aren't conflicts.
Yeah.
that You perhaps think they are.
Yeah, if it involves money, I just
Will
think
there be
it might be. a
proceeds? I mean, will the town get anything from the?
But just because it involves money that the town has appropriated, doesn't make it a conflict of interest.
Okay,
It has to go in your pocket to make it.
Yeah,
a
that's what I'm
conflict of
asking.
interest. And then you have. to
Too
have
bad it's
careful
not.
financial- That doesn't- That's.
yeah, it's not
that's-
going in anybody's.
No,
pocket.
that's not a conflict. of
Okay,
interest.
all right, so we're clear. All right, well, My-
Very clear, because it just, you announced, you said it was a conflict, but it doesn't sound like it's. a
Oh, my
conflict. It
goodness.
sounds
Okay,
like-
Javier, why don't you brief?
Tell us what's
So,
about this.
so based off the brief, Amelie wrote this up. She had a preliminary discussion with me. She informed me that National Book Day was in April. And she was looking at April 23rd, which is a Sunday here. My intention, or how I read it from her, is that in the same way that we had a conversation earlier with the chamber about having more events in town, that increases business and increases tourism. Amelie has seen something that town council has expressed, and I have talked to her about before, which is making Scottsville feel busier on those slow Saturdays, or those slow, not slow Saturdays, sometimes it's slow Mondays, depending on where you're going after too. So part of what she reached out to me is with thinking about capitalizing, as Meredith said, a good history of authors that we have locally and doing an event here. To answer Bill's point, I would see this the same way as I collaborated with Holiday Happenings or with other events. There's nothing directly to the town, but when the town is doing well, it shows up in our
The business
lives. In the same way that we should be supporting our local businesses. To the other point, when I talked to Amelie, I couldn't see spending more than a couple $100, be it like a banner or a flyer. But from the way she described it, she can run this pretty by the skin of your teeth, like pretty lean, much more leaner than 4th of July, especially. I wish she was able to be here because I wanted her to present a little bit on it too. But I can collaborate some time, and she seems to be very aware of that. She wanted to first bring this up to you guys as she started talking to people around town and building those networks. But she wanted to communicate that first to town council also. So I wouldn't be surprised if James hears from something a week from now. And then I know she's been reaching out to other people in the last week to kind
So
of
it is-
brainstorm this.
Is it an all-day event or just morning, afternoon?
10 a.m.
10 to 3.
Oh, 10 to 3, okay. And it's
April 24th or 21st, sorry.
21st, so this is not right. April 2nd here, it says. Okay,
I think 23rd is the actual day, but the 21st is the Sunday, so that's a better day.
so it's Saturday?
Yeah, the 21st is
Sunday.
what she was
Sunday.
thinking, Sunday 10 to
Okay.
3.
Okay,
Since the 23rd is a Tuesday, not the best day to have an event.
Sunday's not the best day to have.
No.
I
Is-
think it was, the idea was to avoid some of the farmers markets, so we also don't overlap on that.
Does she work with the library at all on this?
She's reaching out to the
The
library.
library? Is that-
Yeah.
The library's having a celebration in June for their anniversary, it's 50 or 60 years, something like that anniversary. So that's in the works too.
So, what's the scope of this, essentially, what's the goal, other than just bringing tourism to town, is there, are they fundraising, are they trading books, are they selling books?
No, that's
A little
Salvador.
bit of both, I think. She wanted to have, where you could trade books, have local authors come in, different. Somebody has a cookbook, somebody has history, somebody has this, somebody has that, somebody has a kid's book. Just to kind of get more diversity in with it. She'd also talked about a costume, a literary costume contest.
Does she have a committee or is she doing this herself? Or is she just kind of figuring out as she goes, or how's this work? I was just wondering if there's
She
we used to have a
probably-
committee doing this stuff, but now
I said-
that's a lot to do for one person.
Yeah, I sat down and talked to her, Javier's helping, with what we can.
And
Yeah.
she's reached out to businesses, she
Okay.
reached out to the library. I know she's gonna reach out to the chamber at some
Right.
What
point.
I suggested was to share it with you guys.
That's great.
and I suggested her to do kind of like a little all hands. And get those like core members, same thing as I used to do with Seville Sabroso. And then start putting together what each person could contribute.
Okay. Is there gonna be vendors there too? Has she thought about, I don't know. Oh, I don't have that. Do I have that?
Yeah, it's in your packet.
Oh, I didn't see that. Huh.
I can see it and say that we can definitely, and I'm sure the library would too, we can maybe like stagger it time wise. We do almost like a story time. I know there's like 2 or 3 local children's authors who probably would be
She had
more
talked
than
about that.
happy to,
Oh,
you
okay.
know, read their book, you know, and like do a story time at Baines, and then maybe another local children's author could do a story time, you know, an hour later at the library.
Oh, okay.
I'll tell you what, working at Baines, parents love
Yeah,
story time.
yeah.
Because they can just sit down and drink their coffee, you know, like story time is always a big.
Right.
thing.
And,
So
and
sure.
Bill, to answer your question, she's also looking to raise money for those free library kiosks. You know, we used to have books out on the porch downstairs, but we didn't really have a nice little house for them. Yeah,
Yeah, take a book, leave a book.
yeah, kind of thing.
Yeah,
So I think as a staff member, it wouldn't be as intensive. All day happening surprisingly wasn't too intensive on my side. 4th of July was really the one. I think this would be one of those first year events, and then you could build something up.
Mhm.
It's also an opportunity to start getting a lot of our stovepipes together in a new event, as I've been told before. Town could provide the pavilion I thought of, if we use food trucks, we've done that before. As a token of support for our local community. And then beyond that, just even connecting you with resources that I've heard of, or that Melanie's heard of, or council chambers, you know. From the list I have of food trucks to reach out to this email or different stuff like that. I think it's a very feasible project to do.
and she talked about a raffle.
Oh, yeah, I think that's what we
To-
contribute.
Yeah, you know, I told her I would help any way I could. I was, you know, I'll make the wreath. We were gonna do take old books and make a wreath out of the book pages and things like that, so.
Okay, why don't we, have this discussion at our next work session in February? And she can give a presentation.
Yep.
a formal
Okay.
presentation of what she would expect us to do and what she would like for this to look like, and,
If you can give like a scary script as well.
Yeah.
Just so the town knows what to expect for our financial support if she needs it.
Good idea.
And then having a working relationship with a lot of the authors and
Yeah.
just being a huge reader and literary person
Yeah.
myself. If she needs a council member to like be her committee with her.
That would be
I'm
great,
very happy to
Mary.
volunteer.
Okay, I will tell her that. She'll be so happy.
And I'm also excited to find out what business themed literary treats are.
all right, so that's done. Let's, we'll move on to item 3, revision of these policies on resignations. And I think this was, something that needed, and I think this device will bring this up.
Well, one of the things that we look at mainly was the trails, you know, what's the most important thing, you know, and the most important thing is to get the resignation, the interview, and the approval quickly. So there's not 2 or 3 months lag before you get a replacement. So that was the main thing that we looked at, to try to move the process along. So they have quorums, you know, like the ARB didn't have. So that was the whole idea too. So anyway, this was proposed, and I think we revised it a little bit, but so that's the draft. I don't know if there's any question that I can answer that, but we discussed that, you know, to move the process along.
So we talked about it during government services.
Yes.
The first page is a revision that I made after last month,
Mhm.
taking an input that you guys provided last month on what you wanted during the policies. And then the second page is what was expressed to me by government services. And I drafted a copy as closely as I could respond to what we talked about last week. So it's 2 different paths, but I want to provide some options for council, because in the end, this is the decision you guys make about how you carry out
Yeah.
your.
So we can vote on this and discuss any changes next week.
Yeah, I just wanted to share the work.
We're voting on this?
Yeah, I think
Next
so. I
week.
think we should go ahead and get this moving.
Get it in place.
Okay, so is a final draft gonna come out before a vote?
Well, I think this is, it.
The GSC draft is the final draft.
That's the one proposed, John.
Okay,
Yeah. To simplify it and streamline. I think that was,
Gotcha.
The application.
well, the application is a separate.
separate item, right?
Separate item, and I sent a copy of
It
something.
looks,
Right.
good.
Yeah, I mean, just the essential information are the three big things,
Mhm.
name, position, and email. But the one I sent, I don't know if you looked at that one, but they ask, like, do you live in town and do you own businesses in town and stuff? We wanted to do that, but this is, I think this is good. We could add more lines and you could write on the back and whatever, but
Yeah, the main thing is why do you want to do this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are your qualifications?
Yes.
right, exactly.
I agree.
And you could just,
I agree.
you could write whatever you like.
Yeah, I agree. Okay.
All right, carryover,
Yeah.
new topics, we finished the carryover topics.
Yep.
I have a new topic that I request for you, Javier. Is this time to talk about it?
We have one more.
Okay, after you're done, I have a topic.
Let's do the one that's listed on the agenda and then we'll see what you got on.
Budget, preliminary budget.
It's a little bit unwieldy, but.
Thank you.
Just one to a customer.
I have none.
So, not the easiest format to use, but I wanted to share this with a little bit with you guys. This is the, as Lincoln alluded to it, the full document we use to track capital, to track larger expenses, and to track some larger, maintenance items. So for example, on that CIP, you notice we didn't have, work on our dam. The first 3 pages just going down, has it by categories. So that's honestly more than laundry list, for lack of a better term. Most interesting item, and I'll share it in a digital version too, is page 3 through 6. Because that is what government services helped me out with. It's just a little bit of a behind the scenes on what the process is for budget. So first is putting together everything that I've heard over the last 2 years as priorities that would fit with this. And then page 3 shows, with the help of government services stocks, to start splitting up those priorities among 10 groups. So the third column, for example, is your total cost per year. If we were to split out and divide it evenly.
Which page are we on? Sorry, I'm not
sorry,
sure.
not numbered.
Because they're not numbered.
Yeah, they aren't.
Is
Sorry.
it this one?
One more past.
Tell us what's at the top.
So.
I got you, I'm tracking.
This is what stocks were. So part of it is kind of preliminary thoughts about what our budgets are gonna start looking like in the next few years, splitting up. It's always easier to look at this in Excel, so I'll share it over in Excel with you with a frozen pane, which keeps the left side of it. But essentially, it's a more robust and a more useful for me in the back of the house when I'm trying to kind of think about how to formulate budgets, than that CIP plan that we talked about with the comp plan. Part of it is maybe I want to share this first with you and share it over email and see if I'm missing any gaps on things that council finds really important over the next few years. And then bring that again back to government services and then start going through, I think, the traditional process, which is us taking a bat at a draft of our budget, getting input from government services, providing early input from council, and then start working on our next year's budget. Beyond last year, what other processes do you want from me? I kind of have a timetable in my head similar to the last 2 years. Is there anything I should do a little bit different now that you have a new town administrator?
In regards to what, the budget?
The budget.
The budget? Well, I mean, I think that for me, it's just, and I think Melody's doing it right. If there's anything, if we're looking like we're gonna be in bad shape like we were last year, and we're gonna be down a surplus of $7,000. You know, knowing about the surplus would be good, you know, with the 6 months, you know, what's it looking like after 9 months? So we're not down to our last dollar, and, you know, we had to do all these cuts last year. Of course, you know, we had all these conditions with the, you know, of DMV and COVID and all these other. But it was in some excessive spending. So, you know, as long as we're in, it sounds like we're in good fiscal shape this year, but, you know, knowing this surplus would be good for any extra things at the end of the year that we might use the money for.
So what I can do is next week when we have our December financial statement, do a 6-month check and
Yeah.
then use on March as that 9-month,
Mhm.
as we were talking through.
Yeah.
And then keep working on our budget for next year, but also track that and bring it very visible to you guys.
Yeah.
Rather than, you know, something that just gets
Yeah.
shared, but discussed, I guess would be the easiest way to put it.
Yeah.
Well, Javier, one thing that strikes me is, you know, I brought to the council about potential revenue streams.
Mhm.
And so what this feels like is we're going to base it on our normal revenue streams. Are we considering new revenue streams? Should we have one that considers new revenue streams?
So this is, because I started working on the CIP, I started on that one first.
Mhm.
So then now I can work on the other side. For example, I need to add in what our EV charger looks like. It's not gonna be a King's ransom. I still need to do some research and figure out what new businesses in town would look like compared. Get a little bit of advice on that. So that's maybe something I could provide also.
Well, and we talked about implementing a town tax. I'd like to roll some of that into this discussion. You know, so we can do this in our sort of existing normal envelope.
Mhm.
But if we have this pot of money, we could do this. If we have more businesses, we could do this, right? That's what I'd sort of like to see, I think.
What if I draft like 3 scenarios?
I mean, I don't want you to go to feats of heroics over this stuff. But I do think we need to talk about a strategic spend, not just sort of tactical, the way we always do it. There's some things even on the list that Lincoln brought to us that I think we need to consider. And if we are going to consider something new, we should consider new sources of funding, whatever they be, new events, town tax. We talked about a number of different sources of revenue in the future. So I think we need to have those discussions. It would be helpful for
But
me.
I mean, my feeling is that's at least a year away, because we got at least three businesses coming. And we've had, you know, we got a new, you know, places are filled with businesses now, and we're probably getting a lot more revenue than we've ever had. And I, you know, now that this car wash is gonna bring in huge. And I think we need to see how that looks after it's operating a year, and to see if we even need that, because right now, if we're looking at it, we need it, but we got that, and we got a new restaurant, we got another place at the shopping center is full, we got a day, you know, a daycare, and I just found out there's a new business where that flower place is. Do you know about that?
I didn't know about it.
Right next to the bank, the old bank, yeah, right next to the tavern. So there's places that are being filled up.
Mhm.
And, you know, it'd be good to see after the dust settles where we're at, rather than, you know, using what we currently have or had. And that's my feeling. It's too early. So maybe next year at this time.
Is it this year that we are spending out for our grants, or is it this coming year that we're gonna get paid back for them? I know there's gonna be a discrepancy as far as.
If I do it right, both.
Okay.
So we got delayed on 2 of our grants from last fiscal year. And then I'm working on reimbursement, I'd say about halfway through on it. So what I can do is also not pull that out, but point it out. I think it really gets confusing. I talked with Melody about doing a new format for our budget that pulls out grants. Because we kind of, and then pull out some stuff that I think often shouldn't actually be an administrative line. It should be some kind of. I think it needs to get changed a little bit to make it easier to read our budget. And looking at other examples, other towns' examples. I think I'm on to something with that. Becky suggested that also, because she found it difficult to read sometimes and separate what we think of as, what you guys have talked about, like more your operating,
Right,
and then more your like capital or investment.
right. Must do, keep the lights on versus,
Yes.
And we're on track as far as the budget laid out for this year.
Now, I said there was a new business. Did we get a business license application on that?
That's a tomorrow thing.
You're talking about the flower.
My brain was just sitting here thinking, wait a minute.
It's a little enforcement thing I'll do tomorrow.
Okay,
So what I can do is, similar to what we've done before, is kind of take a look at, if we stay the course, I guess I'll say, scenario with our budget, update a little bit and then try to present something like that. Honestly, I think the most realistic would be to try to share something, February work session.
right,
And then have you guys starting to have those conversations, and then I could provide a scenario. With some different revenue sources.
well, and I think one of the questions, especially around the town tax that came up, is do we feel that we want a revenue stream that is not, yeah, consumer based on economic activity, right? That hedges risk position, right? That we know we have a consistent income, that Javier and Melody know that they have predictable income that's coming 2 times a year, right? I think that might be very helpful. So I think it's more than just, let's see what the business does. I think the bigger question is, do we want predictable revenue? And I think if we can show the value of having that, then we should start having discussions in public forums and things like that and getting feedback.
Yeah, we definitely have to have some public forum.
Yeah, sure.
It's,
Sure.
Yeah.
We're getting pitched for today here. We can get too high on the tax.
But I think people need to understand too, the benefits, right, of having that kind of tax. That it does hedge risk, that it does offer us the ability to do other things. And I mean, it's an open discussion to be had
Yeah.
with the residents.
And I think it would have to be a trade-off too.
Sure.
Reduction. Of the-
Absolutely.
of the,
It should be very
Yeah.
transparent. Here's the upside, and I think people can guess on what the downside is. I mean,
You know,
it's
the other
not,
thing-
it's not uncommon for towns to have.
Yeah,
a tax.
but as far as revenue, I don't know, maybe you could give us a little enlightenment sometimes about the Caldwell Fund.
Mhm.
We've had, for years, that's been $200,000 at least on the Caldwell Fund. How does that work? Can we take that out? Can we use that? Can we grow it better? You know, the market's up now. I don't know if it's, you know, $200,000 could be $1 million in 8 years, you know, if you had it. Is there, it'd be good to know the stipulation.
You can't invest your funds like that.
Oh, you can't? Okay,
No, sir.
but do you have stipulations for using it?
Risk
Well,
adverse.
you do, you're a public entity and you can't, you're restricted in what you can invest in.
Right.
Well, but you restricted, can you, what for its use though? Like say we need something for the
No,
lead.
you can use it, right? You can spend it. for
Okay.
anything you want to.
So it's a background fund, it's a safety net.
Past. We
Have you ever used it?
Well, yeah, we used it when we were doing streetscape.
Yeah.
out
okay.
here.
Oh, really? Okay.
And we
And
we
we took a
borrowed like,
substantial amount out
X
of
number
it.
of $1,000
Then
out
you
of Caldwell
gave it back.
Fund.
Okay,
And then we were reimbursed by VDOT or some
Oh,
other,
okay.
you know,
So it's a
something else to
backup,
put-
a
put it
safety
back
net.
in.
It's a backup.
We use it as
Okay.
kind of like, you know,
okay.
a slush fund. when we needed it. So.
We call it slot.
Right.
I like that.
It's a savings account.
The savings account, okay.
But isn't there also an aspect of if you know, of how your organization is rated by how much you have in reserves? Didn't Becky mention that to us, that we have so much in reserve and it's a percentage of our budget, and so we are rated differently by the amount of reserves we carry?
Well, but we're not, that's really the purpose of issuing bonds, and the town's gonna have a hard time issuing bonds on the public market if it doesn't have tax revenue.
And that's the only benefit of that, Mr. Bowen?
I don't know, only benefit is a big term. To say yes, I think, I don't think you have to worry about the town being rated, because normally that's a term that's used when somebody going out into the financial markets to borrow money. Now, if you have to go to the bank and borrow money,
Right.
then I think the bank's gonna be happy that you have this reserve.
Right.
And more, sort of much more happier than if you didn't have a reserve, if that makes sense.
I think it does also speak to the health, the financial health of
It shows you guys, it shows you.
an organization, the town in this case.
What it amounts to.
Yeah,
So, and that's how the towns traditionally use the Caldwell Fund.
Okay.
It was here when I got here, it's more or less been maintained.
Yeah.
Ever since, right?
So-
Yeah, and before that, for them.
Yeah, it's about the same it was when it started.
Yeah.
We've always replaced anything we took out of.
Yeah,
So this is the history I have, but those who have been around longer can. I've understood it as we received that and then we've only really used it for when we needed liquidity for like the streetscape, for example. When the interest rates were really low, we were not making a lot.
right.
Dividends back, maybe a couple hundred. Now that interest rates are so high, we make about 1,000 and change each month over. So when you notice it, it bumps up a little bit. I have always operated with it being that piggy bank you do not break.
Sounds good.
Probably not the one, I would not wanna do that.
Right, unless you knew it could be reimbursed, right, through a grant or something that was just,
It'd be something like streetscape.
That's right.
It's a
Emergency.
that's right.
Emergency and then they put back into.
and correct something I just thought about on waiting. From time to time, I have to run in, the town borrowed money from state agencies. I think they had public funds.
I think so.
They went out on the market, it's a low interest rate stuff.
Yeah.
And they borrowed, yeah, they borrowed money, but then that's going to be important to have that reserve with the rate.
Exactly.
So I'm staying corrected with what I said.
Yeah, okay, good. Well, it's good, we're all on the same page.
So maybe I jump in and start presenting information and details to you guys. Start just getting the ball rolling on you guys having discussions about the budget.
Yeah.
That's more or less what I want to kind of chat with you guys.
Yeah, that's
I would have
great.
done it a month ago, but
It's a great thought, Javier.
When is, market opening?
The farmer's market?
The market,
It's saying into January, I don't know, but it looks like.
because I am curious, I agree that, I mean, there's sandwiches.
Well, we're gonna get food tax and we're gonna get
Unbelievable.
business
And
tax.
that, the
So we're getting two.
money from the car wash is gonna be big.
Yeah, I think-
I think it's February now, at least.
Yeah, it's probably.
I think at
it's
the,
like
at the game, they interviewed Gordon Sutton then, I think, at the UVA game, and he said February, I believe.
I just, it's gonna be hard. You know how every year when we're doing the budget, we have the estimate of like meals tax and cigarette tax and stuff like that for, you know, doing our budget. It's gonna be hard to have an estimate for next year. I
Yeah,
think
yes,
it's
it
gonna
is.
be
Yeah.
higher.
They
It's
could
good.
open the
For a
first
couple
part of
months.
February and give us a couple of months
Give
to
us a
see
couple,
how.
yeah, that's
Just
what I was
that-
thinking. So
kinda
how
like,
many months do we have to see? how
Fuzzy
they're-
thought of what it might look like, so.
Yeah, because we don't have to approve till July,
Anybody else have anything?
Yeah, I got one.
June.
let
Can
me reach out to my network and see if I can kind of make an educated guess for like a minute term.
I got one thing, it's fairly new, I think, but maybe you're ahead of it, I don't know. Have you been in touch with the development people in Bird Street?
Bird Street.
Yeah,
I haven't talked to them. since-
okay. Well, my question and concern is, I have, because I walk that pretty regularly.
Uh-huh.
And I'm talking to people who know about developments and stuff like that, but they've started on some things.
Mhm.
Do you know about that?
I heard that they've been moving stuff. Last week I heard there was movement and then they had.
They put in a gravel road.
Yeah.
And
drove up there.
they have some electrical equipment, I guess, they're doing electrical work with it. But what my request is a couple things is to, maybe you could get with them and require a monthly report of what they're doing and because there's conditions that need to be looked at. And I think maybe they're just playing with the land right now and doing some stuff, but I think it'd be good for the town to know. I don't think it'd be too much to ask for what's their plan, what are they doing this month, what are they doing next month? It's been almost 2 years and there's finally some movement, but you know, they don't have the final plat in. And, you know, maybe get with Albemarle and what is the requirements for a development that you should know, and we should know, and I know this is new to you, and it's new to our town, we haven't had a development ever.
Well, they've got to meet the erosion requirements.
Right.
they've
and
got to
so-
meet all
so
the county
that kind of thing, it'd be good to know what's their plan for the erosion requirements, what's their plan for this, that, the other, the roads. They've done some surveying, but I think.
I think it's all been a done
Are
deal.
they moving earth?
No, well, they're pouring gravel.
Well, building, I don't know if roads.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the same thing, but they can't,
Move earth.
once they start moving earth, we need to know, right? That needs to be authorized or whatever.
I think that would be a courtesy on their part.
Yeah.
I
Exactly.
think our part is already SUPs through. So I
That's
think our
right.
No, it's not, because there's 10 conditions. And they have to meet those conditions, and the zoning administrator has to look at those conditions. And one of them is the environmental study, and there's a couple others that have, the park where there's gonna be paths and stuff like that. So there's a lot of conditions that they have to meet before they can do anything. And, but I think an update would be good, from them and from. And the communication always hasn't been good with Southern Development. So it'd be good if they went the extra mile and said, look, this is what we're doing this month, this is what we're doing next month. And this is what we have to do.
You call them up and ask them what they're doing.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Like, I'll call them up and.
Right, and report each month of where we're at with that. Because people ask me, what's going on up there? What's going on up there? And
I can do,
yeah,
oh, yeah.
okay,
And then, I'll share it during like the work session. for
yeah,
everybody.
yeah, that'd be sufficient, yeah.
Anything else?
I've got just a question.
Yes, sir.
What are the town hours for Victor Hall to be open?
That's a good question.
9 to 5.
Okay,
See, we used to have it posted on
yeah,
the door.
that'd be
Oh,
good.
we're
Gone.
I can post a new one, yeah.
It's old and black. Owl, something not there.
And also I think if, like today, you work more. I would think it'd be, I don't know how it worked, but I think that you could say like, okay. That Friday we're closing at 2:00, because a couple people have to be off to keep up with their hours and stuff like that. To, post that, say, town closes today at, when they close early. So
Yeah,
that might be good to have too.
well, Melanie, I have tried to do the best is if she has to take some time off.
Right,
I just sit in. Last Friday I sat.
Right.
For the same reason.
yeah, but just put a note out, say, closing early today or whatever. To tell you the truth, it wouldn't be bad to have an annual calendar for the town.
Mhm.
Like, we have a monthly calendar, but like, we're closed on these 2 days because of holidays, we're closed on these 2 days. And I guess we're following Albemarle, but we don't have to do that, but it'd be good to have a whole year calendar, I think.
I can add that. I've done all our meetings through the year, to especially catch those Mondays like next week. That
Yeah.
is Tuesday, but I could put those in. I don't think we put in, I don't think I have them allocated there right now.
It's gonna be a good way to guide people to the website too. If you wanna update your hours, say, hey, this is where they are.
Speaking of the website, correct me if I'm wrong, there's no hours on the website.
Oh, then that's an oversight. So I've been trying to work with government services to chip away at it.
Oh, really? I don't remember that.
I gave you the login, Scott's email.
That, no, but I'm at the hours yet.
No, you guys didn't bring that up,
Right,
more. of
Right.
the committees.
right,
I could really use some help to add just some hours to do.
Mhm. Yeah.
Bill hasn't, with that, you've been editing parts of it.
a little bit, but I haven't done it in a while.
And then I'll do it here and there every other week, but.
Yeah,
it needs more.
yeah, it needs more work. And that might be something we could look at for the budget next year about helping with the website, trying to get some maps and all these other things, and search engine and all that.
So our public hearings for next week have been duly advertised.
Yes,
Very good.
last 2 Saturdays,
Yeah, so.
So
3
next-
days to publish, daily progress now.
Are they on our calendars?
Public hearings?
Yeah.
Next Tuesday. During our regular meeting.
Okay, so they're in conjunction with our regular meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Anything else before we say, go home, see who's winning, Washington or Michigan?
I got it.
All right, well, thank you, everybody. Thank those who attended. See you next week. Tuesday.
That don't, that doesn't always.
That's good, because a lot of.